Shirley walked up to the closed door of the once neatly kept little house, her steps slowing as she approached. Weeds grew tall in the yard, and the boards looked like they'd needed fresh paint a few years ago. She could remember what she'd said to her niece. "Run away, little filly! Run away, you little runts! Run home to your parents! Oh, I forgot! Your father is no-show and your mother's a worthless drunk!" And the cruel whinnying laughter that followed as her student, her niece, galloped off into the madness of Discord's Ponyville, sobbing broken-heartedly. The rest of the day might have been a blur in Shirley's mind, but that she remembered all too well. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw it again, remembered the coldness crawling through her heart as her coat went gray. "I can leave right now," she thought. "I can just go away and she'll never know." What? Did I know I hurt her? Did I regret it? The door opened before the purple mare, and she saw a familiar face, accompanied by the smell of Sweet Apple Acres hard cider. "Mom's just going out for a bit, Rippy honey," Berry Punch called back into the house as she trotted out the door. "I'll be back soon, and you!" Her eyes blazed as she saw Shirley standing there. "What do you want?" she hissed at her softly. "Didn't you hurt my daughter enough the last time? She wept for days after—" Berry swallowed and licked her lips. "After everything got back to normal. She doesn't want to see you, and neither do I." As she spoke the latter words, she pressed against her sister, withers against withers. Shirley saw Berry's eyes look teary before she blinked them away. She added in a near sob, "You hurt us enough, sis." "I did," Shirley said, not bothering to keep the hurt from her words. "I hurt you and I didn't stop Mom from chasing you out because of Ruby. And I hurt Ruby and you even worse with Discord, when he—" She broke off with a shudder. She'd spoken with Apple Bloom's older sister briefly just a day or so ago. The mare looked haggard, and seemed determined to visit every pony in Ponyville who'd been hurt by Discord's reign of terror. But she'd told Shirley in no uncertain words that if she loved her sister, she'd give her the apology she was due. She'd also found out what had happened to her sister from Applejack. How she knew, Shirley wasn't sure, but the mare told Shirley how everything her sister had drank tasted like battery acid, and when Berry sneezed, every pony around her turned into paper cutouts. Shirley shuddered at that. She remembered how Applejack gave her an odd look, but didn't press it. Which was good. Shirley didn't want to tell her how, at the parties she used to throw, Berry once told her that she felt like some big cardboard cutout next to her more attractive and socially adept sister. Shirley wondered to herself, how could that monster know? And more, about how Berry Punch drank everything in her house, from water to juice to, finally, sweet apple hard cider, the desperate hope of finding something, anything that didn't sicken her. All until she passed out from it, only to awaken to find her daughter crying helplessly in the corner. Berry ran from her daughter, horrified and convinced that she'd sneeze and turn her into paper. Ruby chased her, sobbing and begging for her mommy to come back, that she didn't care if she drank too much, she just wanted her back. But Berry ran until she collapsed from exhaustion, only to awake in Ponyville Emergency Care, where the Flower Sisters had to hold her down to tell her that the elements of harmony had beaten Discord, and everything was back to normal. Shirley wondered again how Applejack knew so well what had happened to every pony in Ponyville, but right then she didn't care. She needed to say something to her sister before her. "I've done you wrong," Shirley said, her head hanging low. Looking into those angry and hurting eyes, she said, "You and my niece alike. I thought you were hurting her with your drinking, and I still do." She looked up to catch Berry looking ready to say something. "But the way I did it, what I said to Ruby, that was wrong. Magical brainwashing or not. You're my sister, and Ruby's my niece, and I'm sorry I hurt you both so badly." There, it was out. Shirley looked at her sister hopefully. Berry looked confused, like she wanted to order her away forever and hug her all at once. She snorted and scraped uncertainly at the ground with one forehoof, reminding Shirley of how she'd been so long ago, when Berry was the shy one at her big sister's parties, before she realized a drink or three could loosen her up enough to dance with colts, maybe even kiss them. And then came that stallion passing through Ponyville who dropped in, and 11 months later there came Ruby, and Mom threw Berry and Ruby out, and I became the school teacher and practically swore off stallions for fear of ending up like her. And how many ponies in town even know that we're sisters? When last did we even just talk? Shirley looked at her sister, and Berry looked back at her. It could be any pony's guess what they would have said next, if not for a call from inside. "Mom? Is that Aunt Shirley? I know you said we're mad at her, but if she says she's sorry, then maybe we can let her in again?" Berry Punch gave her sister a glare. She glanced back inside her house, and then with a sigh shook her head, sending her mane spilling. "Yeah, kiddo, it's your aunt. And yeah, she's here to say she's sorry." Berry stepped aside, holding the door open. "Come on in and let's straighten this mess out, okay?" Shirley let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding and followed her. She knew there would still be a lot to do between her and her sister, but at least they had made a start. Inside the house looked cheerily much as it always did. Same old framed photo on the wall of them as a family from long ago. Shirley with her mane in that wild cut she'd favored and smiling wide enough to show her braces. A barely out of full hood Barry half hiding behind her. And close by Dad in his dress armor and smiling, and Mom beside him, looking almost worried, even a family portrait. Just through the door she could see the kitchen. A still full bottle of cider, cheap by the smell, just visible on the counter. "Aunt Shirley! Ruby!" Shirley bent down and embraced her niece as the filly galloped up to her. When Ruby flinched at her touch, she almost felt her heart break. Shirley just blinked the tears away as she said, "Oh, baby, sweetheart. Aunt Shirley is so sorry for everything she said. I didn't mean any of it. It was bad magic that made me say it. I love you more than anything. You know that, don't you?" "Uh-huh," Ruby said in her high-pitched voice, sounding uncertain. She lightly butted her head against Shirley's withers. "I know. You said that in school. The snake monster made us all do bad and crazy things, and it's over now." Maybe, Shirley thought. Privately, she wondered just how long it would take for the ponies to deal with everything that had happened to him. She'd already heard of a few so broken they'd been taken away to the mental hospital on the edge of town. Even Pinkie Pie seemed to be acting more frantic than usual, or so she'd heard. She only realized that she'd said the last part out loud when Barry answered her. "She spent the last 3 weeks partying," Barry said. "I just came over from Sugar Cube Corner an hour or so before you showed up. She finally passed out in the middle of everything, and her friends took her upstairs to sleep." Barry sighed. "I hope she's okay. We owe her and the elements a lot." Then she turned to Ruby. "Honey, maybe you can go out and play with Dinky for a bit? I think your aunt and I need to talk privately right now." Ruby looked from her mother to Shirley. Shirley smiled at her, wondering privately if this was going to end in another fight with Barry. Ruby looked unsure, but she nodded to her mother and left. After she did, both mares sighed, their heads hanging. "Sit down," Barry said, pointing to a patched and weather-beaten old chair. She laid herself down on the old couch. A puff of dust came up from it. Barry looked ready to sneeze, but Frozen held it. She let it out slowly and said, "Whatever you gotta say, let's get it over with." Shirley looked around Barry's home. The slightly weather-beaten couch and chairs, patched in so many places, and the low table by it with stains of spills and rings left by cups left to sit too long. The dust and smell of musk tickled Shirley's nose, along with the sour odor. Shirley caught sight of a pair of empty bottles of cider hastily stuffed behind the couch. Her gaze must have lingered a second too long. When she looked at Barry again, her sister scowled at her. "I'm not drunk, you know," she said, starting to lower her ears. "I just like to unwind a bit when I come home from work, before Ruby comes back from school." "No, sis, it's not like that," Shirley reassured her. She pointed at the bottles. "It's just that I thought you only drank the hard cider the Apple family makes." She pointed one forehead of the drained bottles, bearing the image of a snarling panther on them. "That stuff looks like it came from Manhattan. Straight from a Manhattan sewer by the smell," Shirley mentally added. Noticing how Barry still stared at her, she lamely added, "It doesn't smell as good as their cider does." "I wouldn't know," Barry added with a shudder. "On that day, that monster, whatever the heck his name is, Discord, the personification of disharmony among ponies," Shirley said automatically, as though she were speaking to one of her students. She remembered the Canterlot Gardens and shuddered. "He broke loose immediately after she left with the students. What if he'd broken loose when they'd been standing right in front of him?" She focused her attention back on her sister. "Figures you'd know," Barry snorted. "That thing. I heard a laugh overhead, and when I looked I saw..." She swallowed. "It, right overhead. I was just coming back from Sweet Apple Acres after my shopping. I dropped what I'd been carrying and the bottles went rolling. It saw and laughed, and said, 'Oh look, a pony with a taste for the vino? Don't worry, Toots. I like a pony who hates this boring, orderly world so much they need to get blasted to deal with it.' 'No, it's not true,' I yelled back at him." Shirley winced to see Barry reach out, as though she expected to find something at hand that wasn't there. She scowled, blew noisily through her lips in annoyance, and went on with, "I said, I don't even like the taste of it. It's like drinking battery acid." "Oh, really?" he said back down at me. And then he flew down right in front of me, reached out and tapped me on the head. Barry shuddered again. Shirley hesitated before reaching out and embracing her little sister. For the first time in a long time, Barry didn't give her a dirty look and pull away. Instead, she just said in a small voice, "Her mouth tasted like some pony poured boiling lye into it." Then he said, "Battery acid, you said? Well, given how you pour the stuff down your throat, you must enjoy the taste. So here, a gift for me. And oh yeah." He snapped his fingers. "Something extra, just for the sister of the pony whose didn't set me free. Catch you around, sweetheart, but first I've got some first-rate chaos to get back to." And he laughed, curled himself into a ball, and vanished. Barry looked at the picture of their parents and them together. "I thought I'd finally gone nuts. The way Mom always said that stuff would... well, next thing I knew, every pony else was acting like they'd gone crazy. I sneezed and the ponies around me all turned into big cardboard stand-ups. But their eyes, they blinked and rolled them at me like they were scared. I ran out to find Lily and Roseluck and Daisy, but I did? Her voice trailed off. I heard what happened to you and them from Applejack, Shirley told her. Barry gave her a surprised look. I'm not sure how she knows either, but she does. If you don't want to say... No, Barry said, holding her hoof up. I think I have to say it. As I ran to the flower shop, the street under hoof seemed to be sucking at my hooves, and it smelled like molasses or something. All over Ponyville I heard screams and terrified whinnies, and ponies calling for their mothers and fathers and kids. Then I reached the store. I don't know where Daisy was, but Rose looked outside, sobbing and watering all her flowers, and the more she did, the faster they died. She begged them to live, said she wasn't going to kill them like her father's flower garden when she was a filly. She didn't notice anything else, but I did. Barry broke off and rubbed her throat. Shirley waited for her to go and get some cider. To her surprise, her sister just started speaking again. What I saw then, sweet Celestia, I thought I'd really gone crazy. Poor frightened Lily stood right there beside the shop, yelling at a manticore. Go ahead, try it. You can't hurt me. Nothing can hurt me anymore. I'm invincible and finally safe from everything. So hit me as hard as you can. You'll see. Where the heck did a manticore come from? Shirley sat up straight and snorted in horror. If it had gone into town, no pony would have even been able to defend themselves. She choked as she realized just how many ponies could have died. And I chased Ruby out, and she was grinning and crying when that thing was on the loose. I don't know either, Barry answered her. Maybe the noise drew it from the Everfree? Anyway, Lily yelled at it. I just stared at her. Then she charged at it, and it turned and ran for its life. Barry shook her head. Can you believe it? Anyway, Lily chased it for a bit, and then she saw me and yelled something about showing me who the alpha mare was. I got scared and ran away. I went home, and Barry looked shamefaced and defensive all at once. I needed a drink, but everything I drank? She screwed her face up. Well, you said Applejack told you, but I bet she didn't tell you what happened next. What? Shirley wondered at the haunted look on Barry's face. Something told her she didn't want to know, but she asked anyway. Little sis, what happened? That snake thing, Discord, showed up again. Right here at the house. He laughed at me when he saw me spitting out the sweet apple cider, and said, don't like the taste? Want to know how to stop it? I didn't say anything, but I must look hopeful, because he made this giant bottle of whiskey appear, about this tall. Barry held her head high off the floor. Held wrapped in a paper bag, like some wino would drink. And he said to me with a grin, tell you what, it'll be easy. Just share this with that filly of yours, and everything will taste great again. I swear to Tartarus. Barry looked thoughtful. Funny, looked like he almost flinched when he said that. Then he added, but you both have to drink every single drop, and she's gotta match you shot for shot. Barry, that would have killed her! You think I don't know? Shirley flinched back from the fury and horror in her sister's voice. Barry lowered her voice and said, it's funny. Right before all that, I had nightmares about having a drinking game with Ruby, and she drank so much that she shook herself. Discord laughed at me and vanished. I looked at that bottle, and I thought of what it'd do to my baby if I made her, you know? Barry looked into Shirley's face. Then I opened it and started drinking it. All of it. He almost threw up every time I swallowed some, but I knew that if it was still there when Ruby got back, then I wouldn't be able to resist that offer. Barry turned away as she began to weep. I would have done that to my baby, my precious Ruby, just so I could have gotten my sense of taste back. No, you wouldn't, Shirley said. You wouldn't have done it. Whatever I said about you that day, whatever Mom or other ponies may have said, you love Ruby too much to ever hurt her. I just kept drinking and drinking, Barry said dully, like she'd heard nothing. My sole thought during it all was that at least Ruby would be safe and happy after I'd, well, you know. I knew you'd take care of her, probably better than I ever did. She raised her head to look Shirley in the face, and said in a near snarl, "'Cause I must have finally passed out. When I came to, I found Ruby in the corner, looking gray and washed out like all the other ponies, and she just cried and cried when she saw me. It's okay, baby, I told her. I remember how I felt like the whole world was just sneaking out from under me, and I told her, Mom protected you the only way she knows how. Your Aunt Shirley's gonna keep you safe, 'cause she loves ya." And Shirley just looked me in the face and sobbed out, "Mommy, I just saw Aunt Shirley, and she said that she hates me." I didn't mean to. Shirley forced the words out. "It was what Discord did, little sis. I swear to Celestia it was." Barry just looked at her measuringly before she finally nodded. "I know that now," she said. "But then, Cheery, I felt a sneeze going on, so I ran until I passed out thinking that I'd killed myself to protect Ruby, and that you'd look out for her. The last thing I ever saw was going to be my baby telling me I'd screwed even that up." She shook her head, setting her mane tossing. "After I woke back up, the Flower Sisters told me they took me to the hospital. Yeesh, I don't even know how the heck I'm alive." I actually asked Twilight Sparkle about that, Shirley told her, closing her eyes as she thought back to their conversation in those first few frazzled days after Discord was sealed back into stone. She said that Discord used some kind of magic that didn't have permanent effects, so when he was defeated, everything he did was undone. So the alcohol you drank wasn't enough to, Shirley searched for a less brutal word. Not enough to kill me, Barry finished bluntly. She looked down at the bottles behind the couch. She picked one up and looked at it in mixed disgust and longing. Ever since then, I've been convinced that everything I drink is going to taste like what Discord made it taste like. Took everything Roseluck and Daisy and Lily could do at that party of Pinkies to get me just to drink some punch. If it's all going to make me want to spit it back out, why drink anything that isn't already as good as rat poison anyway? Sis, you keep this up and the law will take Ruby away from you. Shirley repeated the warning she'd used so many times before. Normally it brought Barry to her hubs with fire in her eyes, protesting that she'd never hurt Ruby and never would. And besides, she had it under control. What was the problem anyway? Normally that response frustrated Shirley with its refusal to face reality. Now she found herself hoping for it. Barry just returned her hopeless look. Maybe if they took her and let you raise her, it'd be for the best. What kind of a life am I giving my daughter? Does she really need some worthless drunk around? Shirley snapped her. Lightly, but enough to have Barry gasping in shock. Pay attention and stop feeling sorry for yourself, Shirley snapped at her. You're giving your daughter a life, and it's a better one than if you killed yourself. Barry snorted and rolled her eyes before she got up to head to the kitchen. Shirley rose and put herself between her and it, locking gazes with her. Barry, please listen. I promise I'll help you and Ruby, but you have to get some help, okay? The princess sent some psychologists to Ponyville. They've been helping every pony, even me. Then quickly, before her sister could complain about it, please, you're my sister, and Ruby's my niece. I hurt so many of my students that I'll never be able to make it up to. Let me at least help you. Talk like you want to protect every foal in Ponyville, Barry grumbled, but she sat back down. Okay, if you want to help me and Ruby, fine, but no lectures. She hesitated and added, and I'm not sure if I've forgiven you yet. I know, and it's okay, Shirley said, and meant it. She hugged Barry close to her, ignoring her shocked snort. Little sis.